Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I do apologize for that little technical hiccup. The thing about technology is it's great when it works. So as Shannon said, my name is Allison Hartley. I am a voc rehab counselor with the Department of Rehabilitation. I work specifically in blind field services. I provide a variety of services to individuals in order to help them to live independently and also to achieve competitive employment. One of the areas in which I am really passionate is assistive technology. I have taught assistive technology and been a tireless advocate for assistive technology for my clients over the 5 or so years that I've provided voc rehab services in 2 different states. In addition, I am also a user of assistive technology, so I love this stuff because I use it every day. I also podcast with a dear friend every week about various assistive technologies, mainly focusing on Apple products. But today I'm really excited to give you guys a general overview of what assistive technology is and how the Department of Rehabilitation can assist individuals in obtaining this technology. So Shannon, if we could advance to the next slide, we'll go to the presentation overview. So the Department of Rehabilitation, as I said, provides a wide range of services in order to assist individuals with disabilities to achieve competitive employment. And the focus of this presentation is going to look at assistive technology as a tool for leveling the playing field, specifically for consumers who are blind or visually impaired, both in and out of the workplace. We're going to talk about the process of obtaining assistive technology through the Department of Rehabilitation. And I'm also going to give some examples of different technological solutions. Next slide, please. So you may already know this, but what is assistive technology? So assistive technology, often abbreviated as AT, is any item, piece of equipment, software, or product system that is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of individuals with disability. The thing to remember about assistive technology is that it can be high-tech or it can also be low-tech. It can be specialized technology that is developed for a specific disability population, or it can be a piece of mainstream technology, as we're seeing more commonly now, that has accessibility solutions built into it. Next slide, please. So how do we obtain assistive technology through DOR? Well, in blind field services, we provide services to vocational clients, so individuals who want to go to work, and also to homemaker clients, individuals who just want to be a little bit more independent within their home. Now, assistive technology, like every other service that we provide, is purchased on a case-by-case basis. And it's part of an individualized plan for employment. That's a document that we go through with each client that outlines the different services that we are going to provide for that individual. Generally, we authorize an assistive technology assessment, and then technology is purchased based on the assessor's recommendations. The assessor looks at all kinds of different aspects of what the user wants to get out of technology, where they're going to be using it, what they want to accomplish, things like that. It's important to keep in mind that the client has the right to make an informed choice as to which vendor will provide the assessment, the recommended technology, and also any follow-up training as well. Next slide, please. For homemaker clients, assistive technology usually focuses on those items which will enable he or she to remain independent within his or her home, like a computer with specialized software, an iPhone or an iPad, or a CCTV, which is a reading machine that we'll talk about in a little more detail later. For vocational clients, the needs are going to really vary quite widely depending on the factors. You have to ask yourself, is the client going to be going to school, or will they need some sort of training in order to obtain employment, because that's going to impact the type of assistive technology that may be recommended. Will job placement services be provided? Will they be going right into job placement services? or is the client's goal to try to retain a job that they already have? Next slide, please. Just a little bit of a note about job retention cases as they relate to assistive technologies. I work with my clients who are looking to retain their current employment. I often work with their employers to make sure that they have the technology which is necessary for them to perform the essential job functions of their particular vocation. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, though, assistive technology and other accommodations have to be provided by the employer first unless it is a financial hardship. In the case of financial hardship, all you have to do is write a letter on letterhead indicating that, and then I can go in with my vendors and assist in providing the assistive technology so that that person can keep their job. Next slide, please. So next we are going to move on and start talking about solutions for individuals who are blind. Now I want to point out that many of these solutions can be used by individuals who are totally blind and also individuals who have some degree of usable vision. Vision is such a spectrum that a lot of these devices are interchangeable whether you are blind or low vision. A screen reader is a piece of software that verbalizes information on the screen of a computer or mobile device. And just to go through some examples, one of the most popular right now for Windows is called JAWS for Windows. It still holds a pretty high percentage of the market share. It's also unfortunately the most expensive piece of screen reading software out there to date. It's manufactured by Freedom Scientific. One of the main advantages of JAWS is that it's highly customizable. So if an individual is using a piece of software that is not readily accessible with JAWS, then oftentimes a scripter can go in. An individual who knows the JAWS scripting language can go in and actually do some programming to make JAWS more accessible with that piece of software, to customize it. Window Eyes is manufactured by AI Squared, formerly GW Micro. They just recently merged. It is also highly customizable, and they have their own scripting language, which was introduced a couple of years ago. One of the really cool things about Window Eyes, though, is that now any individual or company that has Microsoft Office from version 2010 on, whether it's a full-on license or a subscription to the Office 365 service, can obtain Window Eyes for free. So it's this is going to be a game changer, I think, in terms of employment, especially as Window Eyes continues to develop. NVDA is another screen reader, and that stands for Non-Visual Desktop Access. It's produced by a company called NV Access, and the really cool thing about this piece of software is that it is absolutely free. So for a lot of my homemakers who just want to do some basic stuff on their computer, like type documents, do some web surfing, email the grandkids, go on Facebook, it's a great solution. And I'm really happy to report that as this piece of software continues to develop, it is becoming more robust, such that it could possibly be a solution for somebody depending on their employment environment and what they're doing. System Access is a piece of software which is manufactured by Serotech. It is definitely a more basic screen reader. There is a cost associated with it. It is very good, and one of the beauties of Serotech is that they also have a suite of other media and scanning services that go along with System Access very nicely. But if somebody's doing just like a data entry or a clerical or a job that relies on basic web navigation, then this could be a solution for them as well. One of the great things about the Apple's Macintosh and iOS devices such as the iPhone or iPad is that they have a screen reader called VoiceOver, which is already built in to these systems. So Windows is still king in terms of employment settings, but more and more often you are seeing companies that are switching to the Mac just because it's a great piece of technology, and as Apple says, it just works. More often, you see companies using mobile devices such as the iPhone or iPad, and these are already accessible to those of us who are blind or visually impaired, which is great because there's no need to go in and do anything really special to make it work. It just works. You turn on the screen reader, and as long as the apps that you're using are accessible, then an employee who is blind is able to utilize that technology as effortlessly as someone with sight. TalkBack for Android is also another solution. I personally feel that the Android user experience is not quite as friendly as iOS, but it is there. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. We're going to continue. We're going to talk about Braille displays. Now, a Braille display works in conjunction with a screen reader in order to convey information in Braille on a PC, a Mac, or a mobile device. Some examples include the Brilliant BI40, which is manufactured by Humanware, the Focus 40 Blue, which is manufactured by Freedom Scientific, and the Braille Edge, which is manufactured by HIMS Inc. Now, a note about Braille displays, there are a ton of different options, a ton of different configurations, and many different sizes in terms of the number of Braille cells which are available. It is extremely important that if you are assessing somebody for a Braille display, you give them exposure to as many configurations as possible, because just as tastes are different in movies and music and any other thing, taste in Braille are completely individualized as well, and one display that works for one person may not work with another. The Braille display that I'm using right now, which I love, was cast off by another one of my colleagues. So it just goes to show that it's really important to conduct a really thorough assessment. Moving on to note takers, these are portable devices which allow the user to take and read notes, manage appointments, browse the web, and many other functions using speech, Braille, or both. So basically think of a note taker as kind of like a laptop, slightly less functional though. But they are generally pretty good at the functions that they provide. So some examples are the Braille Note and Voice Note from Humanware. And the only difference between the Braille Note and the Voice Note is that the Voice Note does not have an attached Braille display. This is a really good device. However, it's based on really old technology. They are coming out with updates to make it a little bit more relevant. But the next products I'm going to talk about, which are the Braille Sense and Voice Sense from HIMS Inc. They are a company who is really trying to keep up as best they can with the times, in spite of the fact that they're running a version of Windows on pretty legacy, older technology. They are able to provide an interface to Dropbox, which is a popular file syncing service. So an individual could, in theory, share files back and forth with colleagues on this device. They have access to an interface for Facebook and Twitter. So if somebody is doing a lot of different social media on their jobs, which is becoming more and more popular, they could perform that aspect of their job on this device without having to fire up a computer. Next slide, please. Next we're going to talk about optical character recognition, which is often abbreviated as OCR because people like me can't say optical character recognition. This is generally software, and it allows individuals to scan printed materials when combined with a flatbed scanner or camera. Examples include OpenBook for Windows, which is manufactured by Freedom Scientific, Kurzweil 1000, and also Kurzweil 3000, although that's more geared towards individuals with learning disabilities, by Cambian Learning Systems, and DocuScan Plus for Windows and Mac from Ceratec. We're hoping that they may someday come out with a solution for iPhone as well. But speaking of the iPhone, there are solutions out there which allow you to now take a picture with your iPhone and scan documents with the camera. One that's going to be coming out soon is KNFB Reader Mobile from KNFB Reading Technologies. That app is going to be out at the end of August, and I think that's going to be a real game changer in terms of really meaningfully scanning documents on the iPhone. And if we could go on to the next slide, please. We are going to talk next about hardware players. Now these are, again, specialized devices, so they're going to be a little bit more expensive, but they allow individuals to read books and other files in a variety of formats, also to record voice notes. Many of these also have Wi-Fi capability, so they can do things like they can download books from some sites. They can actually allow people to access podcasts. Examples include the Victor Reader Stream, which is manufactured by Humanware, the Blaze EZ, once again by HIMS Inc. The advantage of that one is that it also has some scanning and OCR capabilities already built into it. The Bookport Plus, also from the American Printing House for the Blind. Now the real advantage of these players, especially for somebody who might be a little bit older or somebody who may wish just to have access to physical buttons, is that these devices are hardware. They have physical buttons. However, you can use something like an iPhone or an iPad or even an Android tablet. I'm a little bit Apple biased, but you can use a mobile device, a mainstream mobile device, to perform a lot of the functions that you could also perform with these specialized hardware players. That's not to say, again, that one size is going to fit all. There are going to be people who are, there's a market for both. Okay, next we're going to move on to the next slide, and we're going to talk now about solutions for individuals with low vision. First we're going to start talking about magnification software. It often also has a speech functionality built into it, and I apologize, I live right by the BART tracks and the train is going by. It magnifies and highlights different areas of the computer screen or the mobile device screen. Some examples of popular solutions include Magic for Windows, which is once again produced by Freedom Scientific. The great thing about Magic is it works really seamlessly with JAWS. Also Zoom Text for Windows and Zoom Text for Mac, produced by AI Squared. Now there is a built-in magnifier on Mac and iOS called Zoom, but the Zoom Text for Mac is great because it is a better solution for those who maybe need a little bit higher level magnification than the built-in Zoom provides. Next we're going to talk about CCTVs and portable video magnifiers. These are standalone devices for reading printed materials, even looking at pictures. And many of these nowadays have built-in OCR and speech. Like the Clearview from Optelec, you can get a version that has speech. The Ruby from Freedom Scientific is a little portable magnifier that you can kind of take with you places like the store to magnify things in your environment. One that I forgot to mention that's really cool is called the Prodigy, and it is actually a CCTV in a tablet form. It is based on the Android operating system, and the beauty of this is that you can use it kind of as an OCR camera type situation when you're out as a tablet, and then you can dock it into a machine when you get home and use it as more of a traditional standalone CCTV to read papers and look at pictures. Oftentimes individuals with low vision benefit also from lower tech items like various low vision devices, pocket magnifiers with or without lighting, and glasses can often make a huge amount of difference for individuals with low vision. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, I just want to say that I could give a presentation on any one of these solutions and take an hour or two of your time on each one. There are many more technologies than can ever be covered in a single presentation. I'm quite sure I have left some things out, and if so, I apologize. Just to talk a little bit about the trends that I am noticing as a user of assistive technology and as somebody who needs to keep up with it for my job. The trend is moving ever more towards mobile technology for individuals who are blind and fully sighted individuals, and individuals with all manner of disabilities as well. People are not always necessarily wanting to work, in an office setting. They want to be able to work where they are, and this mobile technology is allowing that to happen. We're seeing more of an intersection of mainstream and assistive technologies as well. You're seeing more solutions like Apple's iOS devices and the various Android devices that are out there that are allowing individuals with disabilities to purchase the same technology as people without disabilities and gain the same level of access. And while I joke about being slightly biased towards Apple, I truly love the fact that we now have choices as individuals with disabilities. We don't have to limit ourselves to one market. We can choose, okay, I'm going to get the Android tablet for this task, and I'm going to use the iPhone for that task. And that's in fact what I do a lot in my daily life.
Hi Allison, thank you so much for that overview of assistive technology. We're very excited to hear about the different technologies that DOR is interested in. So in addition to that, I'd like you to talk more about the department, and because we have many people here very interested in AT, and we're wondering, when would assistive technology be considered for a Department of Rehabilitation client within your department? So can you tell us a little bit about that, and then I have a follow-up, but just let us know, when would assistive technology be considered? So when would you pay for it? So now that we've gone over the types of technologies, how do we know when a person can get it?
In the case of my clients, now I know that every counselor is a little bit different, but for me, I feel that a strong knowledge of technology and assistive technology is necessary in order to be competitive in today's job market. What job you're doing, you have to be able to use a computer. You have to be able, in some cases, to independently operate a mobile device. And so for me, as soon as I am able to make the individual eligible, and as soon as we write that plan for employment that outlines the services that we're going to provide, I immediately authorize the assistive technology assessment. And as soon as the results from that assessment come back, I talk with the vendor and the client, and then I immediately authorize the assistive technology and any follow-up training, because it's not enough nowadays for individuals with disabilities to just kind of be okay at computers. It's okay for somebody without a disability, I think, to sort of muddle through and hunt and peck and do just kind of the bare minimum in terms of using the computer. But for an individual with a disability, as we are trying to set ourselves apart as competitive candidates in the job market, as people that people want to hire, we have to show that we have skills that are going to set us apart, and technology is a huge component of that. So I authorize technology pretty much from day one.
Great, thank you. And I'm wondering, how can a client best advocate for the assistive technology they need for school or for work? So they have school goals or they have work goals. What's the best way for a client to move forward? Because often we hear people who have a hard time getting assistive technology that's covered by Department of Rehabilitation, and we want to know best practices for your clients. So what can clients do to help the process?
Well, what I always tell my clients, you mentioned school goals and work goals. What I always tell my clients is that school in and of itself is not a vocational goal, but school is a step to a vocational goal. So in advocating with a counselor for assistive technology, it's needed, let's say, for school so that they can go into a human resources degree program and then work in HR management. Let's just say that that's the goal very quickly here. The key in advocating for the various types of technology that they need is to look at what is needed in order to be successful in that job market, the skills. I make my clients do a lot of their own labor market research. I make them go on ONET and JAN, the Job Accommodations Network, in order to determine which accommodations and which technology could help them. And they need to look at the job market. They need to look at what is, what skills are necessary in order to be successful in that career field. And when advocating for the technology, they need to not so much focus on school. They need to focus on school as a stepping stone to the ultimate career. I need this technology for school so that I can get a job in HR management, because this iPad is going to enable me to access this particular app that I need, or this particular book that I need in order to learn the skills for HR management. This particular computer is going to allow me to produce work that will enable me to gain skills in collaboration, in teamwork, in writing, in communication, that are going to then be skills that I will be able to put towards a job, towards my career. So focusing really, really hard on the career and in the ways in which the technology is going to benefit the individual. Being polite, being methodical. Oftentimes, if a client wants to justify something to me, I'm pretty generous in terms of authorizing assistive technology for folks. But if I have a question, I will ask the client. I'll say, write me a paragraph or two on why you think this technology is the best solution for you. And 9 times out of 10 they do that, and I authorize it, because sometimes I find that putting your thoughts regarding justification of a technology is actually really good, especially for a client who may be really, really wanting this stuff. They are a little bit scared perhaps that the counselor is going to say no, and so in order to drive home how much they need it, they might get a little overzealous, maybe a little angry, a little pushy in verbal communication. But when they sit down and think about why they need this technology and try to put it in writing, it often allows them to express themselves a little bit more eloquently.
Thanks, Alice. We do have some more questions. One from Sandra Graham. She asks what about the homemaker program where they are blind and not going to be working or going to school? How do they become eligible for AT that way? And then we'll have Joe Escalante ask his question afterwards. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I see homemakers as just as in need of technology in many ways as individuals who are going to work, because you almost need a computer to do everything nowadays. I mean, my husband and I are both blind, and in managing our home, we use technology to do so many things, to order groceries, to scan printed materials, to conduct research, to listen to music, to keep up with friends and family. And we would be doing those things regardless of whether or not we were both working full-time. Now, fortunately, we are. But for an individual who either cannot or does not wish to work full-time, they still want to do those things. I work with a lot of senior citizens, and they want to FaceTime with their grandchildren on an iPad. They want to be able to go out into the community and go shopping independently and use, some of these newer iPhone apps are actually having built-in coupons in them that you can actually scan at the store and save on various items. Technology is really matriculating into all aspects of our lives as individuals. So regardless of whether or not somebody is working, they need technology. And so when a person becomes eligible for services, and I'm writing a homemaker plan, one of the things we assess when somebody has chosen the homemaker track is social benefit. How are the services that we are going to provide as a counselor going to change the life, the outlook, the adjustment to vision loss for this person? And technology is a huge component of that.
Hey, thank you so much. Hopefully that answered your question, Sandra. Joe Escalante, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, thank you. So, earlier you were talking about having the client be their best advocate and know all about the technology that they want and to justify why they need that iPad or whatever. But if they don't know what it is that's going to be best for them, is DOR, using the AT advocates as part of the AT network? Are they pushing towards us as people who can suggest and refer equipment, or what's the protocol?
To be completely honest with you, I don't think so. All I can really speak to is my particular caseload. We utilize our vendors, and I suppose some counselors may utilize AT advocates. I'm actually not really familiar with AT advocates as an agency or an entity, but I'd welcome the opportunity to learn more. But yes, I mean, typically we rely a lot on vendors to provide a lot of the justification as to why the technology is necessary. For my part, because I am so knowledgeable in this area, I tend to understand pretty much immediately why a particular piece of technology is needed. Sometimes, once in a blue moon, a client will try to ask for something that is not necessarily relevant to their plan just because it's a shiny toy and it's what they want. But most often, like I said, technology is such a part of our lives that I tend to understand why it's needed, and why even some of the more high cost items are a necessity for individuals living their daily lives and going to work. But to kind of get back to your questions, I have not referred any of my clients to AT advocates, but other counselors, especially within the department at large, not just limited to specialized services, I'm sure have done so.
Okay, great. Joe, did you have any more questions? Okay.
No, thanks. I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. So, Allison, we have another question from Esmeralda. She said, you mentioned that every counselor is a bit different. Are there guidelines that all counselors follow? And if this is the case, shouldn't all case management be the same across Department of Rehab?
In theory, yes. In theory, yes. We are bound by our Rehabilitation Administrative Manual. We are bound by the California Code of Regulations and also the Federal Code of Regulations. So in many ways, yes, case management is standardized. I find that sometimes a stumbling block can occur if a counselor is not as attuned to the assistive technology, but most of the time the counselors go off of what the vendors recommend. So in general, it is pretty standardized. I am possibly a little bit more involved than most counselors in the AT component. I mean, we are not supposed to give our opinions. We are supposed to let clients make an informed choice. But if they ask me point blank, what are the benefits and drawbacks of this versus this? Because I get clients of all varying levels of technical ability as well, and so I do very carefully provide that information. But yes, in general, case management services should be relatively standardized as per the regulations that we all have to follow as counselors. But as you know, in any agency and organization, there are different personalities, there are different ability levels, and sometimes that can affect service to some extent.
Okay, thank you for that. Nubian has a question. Go ahead, Nubian.
Sure.
Hi, Allison. So my question was sort of along the line of what Joe asked a few questions ago. So do you know of a policy that DOR has about other individuals being involved in advocating for a client? I'm not talking about, if the client has an issue and it later ends up like in front of a hearing or something. I just mean, like maybe for instance, if a person has a developmental disability but they still have a vocational goal, and maybe there's a similar to what you mentioned, like a counselor that would like them to justify a piece of AT they wanted because they weren't sure exactly what the connection was, and that for whatever reason the person wasn't able to articulate or explain that. Does DOR have a policy, as far as you know, where people can bring in sort of maybe an extra voice to sort of explain for them or to help them advocate for themselves? And not necessarily just in the case of someone with a developmental disability, but just in general, do you know of a policy like that?
Yes. In fact, this goes far beyond just AT. An individual can specify really any number of individuals or agencies to serve as an advocate, as a person with whom I can comfortably talk about their case and the things that they may need. All that needs to happen is that if they are aware of the agency or individual that they wish to serve as an advocate, I would need a release of information in order to speak with them, and then in that case they are privy to whatever information the client is comfortable with divulging about their case. And at that point, yes, they can come in and serve as an advocate to advocate for any specific piece of technology or really any other service as well. I just need that release of information.
Okay, great, thank you. Karen Crow, do you have a question for Allison?
I just have a couple of comments. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah. Alicia, you're doing a fabulous job. I want to thank you. I don't know that I've met you in person, but you're really doing a great job representing everybody with Department of Rehab. I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Some of the questions that are coming across, I wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit and say that all counselors are required to consider assistive technology, and it is part of the IPE, the individual, the individual plan, if you will, for everybody. That is supposed to be considered.
Yes.
For everyone. And I know that not everybody is as well informed about assistive technology as somebody from Blind Field Services would be. And it's not an issue necessarily that the counselor doesn't want to provide it. It usually is an issue of the counselor not necessarily understanding the need. So what Alicia has said about writing down what the need is, and I agree with her, is that as much preparation as somebody with a disability can get prior to employment is really important. So getting assistive technology in advance and being able to get up to speed on it is so critical. So that needs to be emphasized. I encourage people to use advocates, the assistive technology, or they change their name. What are we now calling it?
Ability tools.
Ability tools. I should know that better. Is a good resource to look onto for suggestions, as well as Jan. Also, I just want to encourage people that if you feel that you're not quite communicating with the counselor that you're working with, it's okay to take it to a higher level and to and even let the counselor know, I'd really like to take this to a higher level and speak to your supervisor. It's quite okay to do that, and we encourage you to do that. And just coming from, I am a team manager supervisor, so I'm saying it's okay to do that. You don't want to necessarily do that every time with your counselor, But if you do it in a way that you want to work together with them, it's quite all right, and many times it's just because the counselor is not aware that something is possible. And that's it.
Yes,
thank you.
Thanks for those comments. Actually, Allison, would you mind just following up with Karen's question about what can you do in terms of going, if you feel like your counselor isn't providing you the AT or other things that you need to succeed with your individual plan, where should you go or how should you proceed?
Well, the first step is to always try to resolve everything at the lowest level possible. So if the counselor and the client are not able to work things out between the two of them in terms of reaching a resolution, then it is entirely appropriate for a client to call and speak with the counselor supervisor or email, contact in some way the supervisor. Sometimes that may result in a meeting between the counselor, the supervisor, and the client together. And I would say that in most incidences that can resolve the issue. There is also the option of contacting the local client assistance program if an individual feels that they're not necessarily being heard by either one. But in general, if a conversation with the supervisor happens, they're able to generally resolve any issues or misunderstandings. Because, like Karen said, in a lot of cases it's just a misunderstanding and sometimes perhaps a miscommunication that's happening.
Thank you for that clarification. That's great. So people can go to CAP. I think is it most cities have CAP, or how would they find one?
Yes, when a client applies for services, they should be given information on how to contact the client assistance program at application, at intake. At that time.
Okay, great, thanks. Does anyone else have any questions for Allison? We still have half an hour. So if you want to type your question, I can read it out to Allison, or if you want to use the phone. Is anyone on the phone that might have a question for Allison? Anyone else on the phone? I see, Derek from ILRCSF. Go ahead with your question.
Hi, thank you so much, Alicia, for being here today and for talking with all of us and for your presentation. It was very thorough, and yeah, there's so much assistive technology for so many different areas. It's tough to cover them all. My question goes to: can you speak to the strategizing that comes with a DOR counselor working with a client? Earlier you had spoken about how it's important for them to kind of already have a sense for like what would work best in their situation, but in my experience, it's not so much just about the tool, it's also about the strategies around using it, as well as not just a vendor with a particular item, but making sure that is this the right strategy, is this the right choice for you? Can you speak more to that kind of process of coming up with strategies?
Sure, and I fully recognize that in some cases the client, especially somebody who's new to blindness and new to technology, may not fully understand, how this technology can best be utilized in their lives. Some of that stuff is stuff that just comes with time. But I know what I do with my clients, especially if they're new to technology, I will have the vendor, sit down with them and kind of just go through, okay, this is what you've identified that you want to do with in terms of your vocational goal. Your short-term goals may include something like school. So here's where this particular piece of technology is going to allow you to perform the tasks that you want to do. This MacBook Air, for example, will allow you to type documents whether you're in your dorm room, whether you're sitting on the quad, whether you're in a class taking a test. Because it's portable, it might allow you to take the test in the classroom with the other students as opposed to necessarily going to the DSP office. It can be plugged into a monitor for somebody who's low vision. So in terms of the strategy, again, I know I keep coming back to this, but a lot of that really, in general, falls to the vendor to be really thorough about what about what the person is going to be doing with the technology. But a lot of that actually, in my case at least, falls to me to gather enough information at intake from the client to gain a really good picture, so that when I write to the vendor and say, I am referring Joe Blank for an assistive technology evaluation, his goal is to become employed as a office manager. In order to do this, he's going to need to go to 2 years of community college. So a lot of that falls to me to sort of help the client in a lot of ways to paint the picture. At least that's the way I feel, and that's my particular counseling style.
Thank you.
And I hope that answered your question. And if you'd like me to clarify anything else,
my only I guess follow up to that is I got on a little late, so I apologize if this was answered at the very beginning. But when working with during the intake process or during the initial part of like we're going to bring in X vendor, is it more done of just like let's go with X vendor first, and if that doesn't work, we'll go to this next vendor, or is it kind of given a process for here's a few different technology ideas we can try to hear from each? How do you see that best working?
Well, in terms of choosing the vendors for the assessment, there are a lot of different factors that go into that. One of which is does the individual want training and assessment in their home, in their school environment, at work? So that in some cases can limit the vendors the vendor which is utilized for services. I tend to go with vendors who are going to display a wide variety of technology to individuals. And again, if somebody asks who should I choose, I will tell them about all the different vendors and the different strengths that they have in terms of the types of technology that they provide. And again, some counselors have different ideas about whether or not that is what should be done. But in a fair, ethical, non-biased way, I try to educate the client. If you go with this vendor, they are probably going to show you these types of products, which will probably be adequate for what you need. But if you need to see a wider variety of products, you might want to think about these two vendors. And then I leave it up to the client ultimately to choose that, because that is their right.
Thank you.
Great question. So we have a question from Bruce at UCP San Diego. His question is, are there particular requirements regarding level of disability to qualify to be a DOR client? In the past, I believe DOR was prioritizing to serve only the most disabled individuals first.
I can't really speak to the generalist population, that is individuals who have disabilities other than blindness or visual impairment, because that's not my area of expertise. But I know that at least in terms of blind field services, we at this point are serving any individual who, or at least willing to consider eligibility based on visual functioning. Basically, if an individual is experiencing some sort of loss of visual functioning, and the loss of vision is impeding their ability to live independently or to work, it behooves them to come in and talk to one of us about the specific difficulties that they are having, because we can usually help. In terms of priority categories, I have to be completely honest with you. I don't usually pay attention to a lot of that stuff. I feel like if somebody is experiencing a visual difficulty that is impeding their ability to live a productive life, and especially to work, then I'm going to try to do everything I can to be of help to them. And sometimes, if it turns out that visually they are not eligible for services, sometimes we'll have somebody who's like blind in one eye, or who is and who's like 20/20 in the other, and they see that there is some sort of functioning difficulty in doing in performing tasks and stuff with one eye, even though the other eye is perfect. Sometimes I send everybody who comes through. If I'm not sure if they're going to qualify, I send most people to the UC Berkeley Low Vision Clinic. And even if they're not technically eligible for services, usually the Low Vision Clinic provides some sort of solutions, ideas that allow them to then function more independently. And so much of that, depends on the individual as well. I hope that clarifies. Like I said, we don't, in blind field services and in specialized services, I can't really speak to deaf and hard of hearing, but I can speak to blind field services. If somebody has a visual difficulty, we will do what we can, to try to help.
Okay, great. So we have a question from Ricardo. Have the funding cuts to DSPS offices affected Department of Rehab service delivery regarding availability of exposure to AT for clients?
Not at this time, thank goodness, because in my area, I'm really fortunate to have the knowledge and the wide availability of technology from various vendors. It used to be, before I started in California, it used to be that a lot of people were getting technology recommended from DSPS offices, and I can definitely see how that would have been a great way to get a nice thorough assessment done kind of in-house and get students what they need right away. But our vendors have really stepped up to the plate in filling that gap, at least for the population that I serve. I have not noticed any negative effects. That being said, like I said, I can definitely see where this funding was extremely useful, and I would sure utilize those services if funding were to be reinstated.
Okay. Are there any more questions from the participants? It's great to have Allison here and answer all those questions directly, so take advantage of this opportunity while we have her. Okay, while people are thinking, I have a question. Allison, I was wondering, I know we talked about AT assessment and things like that, and so they get assessed. In terms of paying for the device, is it normally because it's been assessed and they've been approved that the AT device would be covered for the most part, or do clients have to pay a portion of it, or is it based on income level, or sort of what the qualifications are?
It is based on. Yeah, it is based on income level. I would say that the majority, really every client that I have served, has fallen. There's a formula that we utilize where we look at the client's monthly gross income. We look at any assets that they have. We look at any expenses that they have in terms of dependents, in terms of whether or not they're receiving SSI or SSDI. I would say the majority of the people that I see are receiving SSI or SSDI, and at that point they are not financially responsible for any costs associated with AT, simply because the amount of money that's coming in on those, is barely enough to keep them, above water. Now, yeah, if somebody was making like $1 million a year, and they came to Department of Rehab for services, I might look into, what they could comfortably afford to help put towards their own AT. But in general, we do we do provide those services without usually expecting that a person's gonna contribute any of their own money, because a lot of times it's just not there.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Newben, you have a question?
Yes. So I think Allison just said that I wasn't sure if we were talking about the assessment or the device. But if we were talking about there being sort of a sliding scale on devices and people potentially having to contribute to the purchase of their devices, I thought that once a device was purchased, it was the property of DOR technically. So I was just wondering. Okay.
It is, isn't it? Yes, and thank you for pointing that out, because when a technology is purchased, through the life of that case, so through the entire rest of the time that the case is open, technically the assistive technology is considered to be on loan by the department until such time as the case is successfully closed, at which point ownership of that equipment and the responsibility for the maintenance of that equipment then goes to the consumer. There is a section of the plan that each consumer signs which outlines that pretty explicitly.
Okay, so is there any difference or effect on, I don't know, if for some reason the device needed to be replaced with something or taken away for some reason? Let's say maybe the person no longer was accomplishing their goals or decided to stop being a client. If they had contributed part of their own income to purchase that, have you ever seen that happen, and sort of like what's the result of that?
I have honestly never seen that happen. I would say that if they had contributed a portion of their income, I would probably just allow them to keep the device. However, if it had been a device that we had purchased and the person didn't accomplish their goal, it would really depend on. Each of these things is decided, of course, as you know, on a case-by-case basis. But for example, I had a client who simply stopped cooperating with services and would not move forward in accomplishing his goal. And in that case, we did have to, we came very near to getting the police involved to get that equipment back, because technically, he had not achieved a successful outcome, and so we did have to get that equipment back. Everybody approaches that a little bit differently. I'm trying to be diplomatic. Everybody approaches that decision of whether or not to take the equipment back a little bit differently. But in the case of somebody who just stopped cooperating and didn't achieve their vocational goal or their homemaker goal for that matter, if it had been something that we had purchased ourselves as a department with no contribution from the client, then yes, we would be within our right to take that equipment back.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Actually, to follow up Newman's question earlier, so I know we talked about the responsibilities of Department of Rehab. So what are the responsibilities of the client? We know what are the expectations that the clients have to contribute to be considered a successful case, or be able to access those resources? Well,
in order to be in good standing, as it were, with the Department of Rehabilitation, the client has to do several things. They have to stay in contact with the counselor, keep us informed of any changes in terms of life circumstances, in terms of a desire or a wish to change the vocational goal, especially in terms of contact information. I can't tell you how many cases I've had to close unsuccessfully because they moved and changed their phone number and just didn't tell anybody, and then I couldn't find them, and then we risked getting out of compliance in terms of our timelines. But they have a responsibility to be actively involved in services. If we have put services on a plan like assistive technology training, like orientation and mobility training, or any other services in which they're going to have to be actively involved, they have to be available to complete those services, regardless of other commitments in their life. If they've signed the plan saying that they're going to be available for these services, then they either need to do that, or we need to have a reason why they can't be available for services, in which case, which can be many things. Could be health problems of a family member or a loved one, health problems in the case of the client themselves, in which case we can put services on hold without closing the case. We can put services on hold for up to 90 days, at which point we would need to reassess at that point whether or not the impediment, which was keeping somebody from being involved in services, was severe enough that they couldn't participate at this time, and then we would have to move towards case closure. But basically, a client needs to be proactive, needs to be involved, needs to be respectful, needs to do what they agreed to do in terms of the plan, in terms of being involved. They need to, if they're going to school, they need to get us their grades. They need to get us book lists in a timely manner so that we can authorize the next year's tuition, the next semester's tuition, and also any books that might be needed. They need to maintain above a 2.0 GPA. They need to basically do the plan is a contract between myself and my clients, and myself, my clients, the department, my supervisor, and by signing their name, and I really emphasize this when we're going into plan status with a client. I say, by signing your name to this document, you are agreeing to be available and participate in each one of these services that we are going to provide. And if you're not, then that can be seen as lack of cooperation, and that is grounds for case closure. I don't fool around with that, because quite frankly, I have a lot of clients. I don't really have the time to track down a lot of folks who aren't going to want to be involved in their plan. So
that is very helpful, Allison. Thank you for clarifying those responsibilities that the clients have to fulfill as well, not just from the Department of Rehab. So thank you for spelling all those out and those information out. So does anyone else have any questions for Allison? Okay, so I see something from Ricardo. Speaking of which, is there any reduction in caseloads coming for DOR counselors? It's a general question.
I would say no, but the nice thing is that we are moving into, we have moved into a more team approach to providing services, and in hopes that we will be able to provide services to more clients in a more timely manner. It's called the VR Modernization Service Delivery Model, and basically now teams, units of counselors are broken up into teams, and a team consists of a staff services manager, formerly known as a rehab supervisor, a certain number of what's called SVRCQRP. That's what I am, a certified a senior vocational rehabilitation counselor, qualified rehabilitation professional, and those are the individuals who do a lot of the direct work with the clients, the plan development, the eligibility determination, closure determination, a service coordinator or two on each team. I think most teams have two, who do a lot of the things that, quite frankly, sometimes the counselors don't have a lot of time for. They're a great source of support for us. My service coordinator helps me with authorizations. If I need to authorize AT for 3 people, I just make her a list. I say, this is what they need. If you can get the quotes from this and this and this vendor and authorize these services, then she goes ahead and does that. Sometimes she will do some of the client follow along that I may not have time for, like if people have dropped off in the face of the earth. I give her a list of people to call to see if they're still interested in services. So he or she, because there are many teams, and the breakdown was always a little bit different in terms of the number of QRPs. The other members of the team include an office technician who is clerical support, and I'm fortunate enough to have my clerical support housed right in the office with me next door to my cubicle. So that's pretty awesome. So they do a lot of the paperwork and make sure all the invoicing gets processed and keep everything moving smoothly. So each member of the team has a really vital role to play. All this to say that in spite of the fact that caseloads definitely have not decreased, I feel that at least in my unit and in my caseload, the level of service that I'm able to provide has really, really increased dramatically due to this new team approach, because now it's not just me trying to juggle everything at once. I can talk with Melissa and ask her to help with this big pile of authorizations. I can, if I'm going to be on vacation, like a few months ago I went to guide dog school, and Melissa basically handled a lot of the aspects of my caseload that she was able to as a service coordinator, and my colleague, who is also QRP in the Berkeley office, handled the things that required counselor approval, like the signing of plans and such. So this team approach I think, has revolutionized the way that services are delivered in spite of ever-increasing caseload sizes.
Thank you. Okay, so anyone else have questions for Allison? We have about 5 more minutes.
Hi, it's not a question, just a comment. So for people who had questions that were more general about DOR, and maybe there wasn't a full answer, since Allison is focused more on blind field services, there's a web page on the DOR website that has some of, sort of some of the things that you all asked, and it has, I guess, regulation involved as well. So if you want to know what the actual policies are, it sort of puts them in plain language. I'll just put the link to it in the chat box, so if you all would like to look at that, it might answer some more of your questions.
Thanks, Nuban, for providing that.
Thank you. And if anybody has any questions that they think of later, or that I may have not answered as thoroughly as you would have liked, please do feel free to get in contact with me. My contact information is back up in the beginning of the PowerPoint presentation. I include my email and my telephone number. I'm available through both mediums, so please do feel free to reach out if you have any questions. If you're working with a client, down the road, and you have some general assistive technology questions, I'm happy to help out in any way I can.
Okay, great. Thanks, Allison, for being available to do that. And her email address is hartley@dor.ca.gov for those who are on the phone. Okay, thanks, Allison, for presenting today. So thank you again. Again, please remember to take the survey at the very end. We really, really appreciate your feedback. Thank you, Allison, for presenting today and answering all our questions. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to contact Allison directly. Thank you, and have a good rest of the afternoon. Bye.